Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella, Herrera. Maricella, how are you across the great digital divide?
How am I across it? I'm okay. I'm tired, but I'm okay. And my computer, I think, is also tired because it's been acting up since this morning.
Well, I hope your computer gets better. You also have a new couch, so that's exciting. If you're tired, you have a place to chill out for a bit.
Yeah, I also have a new rocking chair that came with the couch, and I've been finding myself sitting on it pretty much all day, every day, because it's just so comforting, the movement of rocking back and forth.
Well, you have strong memories tied to rocking chairs. I mean, it's something about your childhood and growing up that you're continuing to embrace in adulthood.
Yeah, it is. It's how I used to have a very similar I still do, very similar rocking chair in the bedroom back in my parents' place in El Salvador, where I grew up. And that's where I studied and read. And still, when I go visit, that's where I sit and read every day and night. So it is a comforting feeling for me.
Yeah, it's been interesting as we, I think, get more comfortable with the remote work and working from home, how, you start to notice on the video calls, like someone's bouncing up and down on a exercise ball. And I now have a little bike under my desk, so I'm going side to side and you're rocking back and forth on the chair. And we're all kind of like these like little weeble wobbles in the frames, all doing our thing.
So basically, you're saying our team meetings are just would make people very, very dizzy.
Yeah, but it's funny because you don't notice it so much until someone calls it out, and that's the only thing you notice. So, but yes, we are. It would make someone a little bit dizzy. But the aspect of just technology, how we're embracing technology more during this time, has been something as a leader and as a manager and as a parent with kids in school that I've been thinking a lot about. And our guest today has been thinking quite a bit about this for longer than the past 7 months. Teresa Carlson is with Amazon Web Services. She manages a lot of their cloud business. She's doing really important work when it comes to how governments and schools connect with the cloud. She's a big thought leader and proponent for how to help businesses move forward, and has just been incredibly inspiring in our conversation. Definitely delving into aspects of this time and where we're going that I hadn't thought about.
So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, and I think our listeners will as well. Teresa is the Vice President Worldwide Public Sector at Amazon. She has a depth of experience in technology, in the cloud. Her story is inspiring. I just really enjoyed the conversation, found a lot of inspiration, not just in how she built her career, but how she's building her legacy and how she's creating important conversations and impact as we look at how governments, schools, companies are moving into this digital age, being supported in that process and continuing to lean on each other to do the great work. Let's get to my conversation with Teresa. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast. It is an honor to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
I would love it if you could start us off with a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today. What's your story?
Well, I am, of course, Teresa Carlson, and I'm a native of Kentucky, which is the beautiful bluegrass state. And I have been now at Amazon Web Services. I'll start my 11th year in December, which I have to tell you, it's gone so fast here. I really look back and it seems like I just started yesterday. And here at Amazon Web Services, I actually started, I kind of call myself the founder of our worldwide public sector business, which is our government business around the world, education, not for profits and NGOs. And then I also have something called regulated industries now, which includes our energy group, our financial services, also aerospace and satellite, and our energy. And then I also have our training and certification team. So that's kind of who I am today. But I will say I wasn't always in tech. I actually started my career in speech and language pathology, if you can believe that with this accent I have. But I did. I have an undergraduate and a master's degree in speech and language pathology. And actually, one of my early jobs was working in Germany for the U.S. Department of Defense as a speech and language pathologist. And that was one of my very favorite jobs I had as a speech and language pathologist, because I worked with children from birth to 5 years with military families there who had these children that they had developmental disabilities, or just they had a delay in their development. And we had a multidisciplinary approach that we worked with these young children and their families. And it was such a fun adventure. And I so loved the work I did with the military at the time, and also seeing the results of what we did. But I ended up in tech because, believe it or not, over time, I kind of felt like healthcare was I felt like Groundhog Day. And I really wanted to do a career change. And I ended up getting into technology. My first company was at a company called Keyfile Corporation out of Nashua, New Hampshire. And I really did not know that much about tech. I kind of fell into it, but I also fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it because this company was a workflow and a document management company. And if you know very much about healthcare, they need workflow and they need document management. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, you can do all this? And for some reason, it kind of just gelled with me. And I saw the capabilities that technology could bring to really do things better, faster, get data insights, move things kind of forward. So that's really where my career started. And from there, I actually then worked I'll kind of fast forward and tell you, I went to work for Microsoft because I managed the Microsoft relationship. And after I left there, I got a call from the recruiter. And what's interesting is my career, I've never been great, I would say, at planning it, believe it or not. But Microsoft had called me to do a background check on somebody who'd worked for me at Keyfile Corporation. And the recruiter said, "Hey, you sound like you know a lot about Microsoft." And I said, "Well, I do. I managed our relationship there as one of my things, because I was SVP of marketing and business development." And she said, "Hey, are you interested in a job?" And I was like, "Well, what do you have?" And that kind of started my career. I ended up interviewing for a job for the federal government, U.S. federal government. And I thought, I'll never get this job. I'm not really qualified, but I got the job. And I ended up spending almost 10 years at Microsoft with a fantastic career there, where I ended up kind of doing multiple jobs until I ran our federal business, which was a multi-billion-dollar business. And then I had the good fortune to meet Andy Jassy, who's our CEO of Amazon Web Services. And now I've been here, I'll start my 11th year. So really kind of, for me, a dream career that I probably never thought I would ever have.
Teresa, thank you so much for sharing that, and congratulations on all of your success. Excited to hear about this new role you have with regulated industries. And, to me, that's inspiring to just, see how our careers continue to expand and grow working within an organization. And so oftentimes when I'm talking to mentees or mentors, the feeling is you have to leave your company to get into something new. But I think the reality is there's so many opportunities where we are, and it's about, how we tap into them.
Agree. In fact, I will share. I think it's important. Even pray for your listeners on this one. I like to tell the women I talk to and work with, and young women in universities coming out who want to spend some time with me. I like to tell them, do your very best to write your own job description. Like that's one of the best pieces of advice I always have is, write your own job description. And it's been years since I've taken any job that I really didn't write my job description or evolve my job description. And what I kind of mean by that is if you're in a role and you have a passion for doing something, you need to take it to your manager. You need to write it up and say, look, here's something I think the company needs, and I can do this role for you. Or if you have a position that you're applying for, it's okay to take and kind of evolve that by sharing with that individual that other strengths you could bring to the table and do. Sometimes you need to get in there and prove yourself first. But once you do that, it's really good to try to shape what you do. And I also believe, I know this, I see it all the time, that women can do so much more sometimes than they believe they can do when they see it written on paper. Because they'll say, I've never done that. And I'm like, but can you do it? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, let's go. So I do think it's important to try to just make sure that you think through what the strengths you are that you bring to the table always, and make sure that you're shaping any position or role you're in and demonstrating the capabilities that you bring.
Teresa, you so working at Amazon Web Services, you have a really important role. You're working with government agencies, nonprofits, NGOs, educational institutions. I would love to understand more what that means. I mean, what is the relationship between these organizations, and what specifically is the role that AWS plays?
Well, I will share. I do think I have the best job in the world. And it is a little bit because Andy and Amazon kind of allowed me to shape it from where I started. Because in the beginning, we really were focused mainly on education and government. And that was really about it. It wasn't so much about going in and to sell them something, it was going in to provide services and IT that were game changing to their mission. It was to help them drive to digital innovation. And the one thing that we've always said is that governments and educational institutions deserve the same great technology as any startup. So, really, that was our premise, to really make them so much better by utilizing technologies where they could experiment. Because in the old world of technology, Kristy, they could not have that same experimentation. They went out and bought a bunch of technology, and then they would kind of hope that they needed all that. And they would, configure and reconfigure and see if it would work. And with cloud computing, which is what Amazon Web Services, AWS, brings to the table, we bring a whole new model to them where they can experiment, they can fail fast and recover fast. They can try 3 quick experiments in the same area to see what works the fastest, the best, the most efficient, the most secure. So that's really the best part of what we do every day is we've really disrupted the way these entities and government, as you know, over the years, they're hard because they have a lot of very onerous procurement regulations. They've got very difficult security configurations, and they're always having to change those because they have a high threat vector. So to work with them, you can't, I say you can't, it can't be for the faint of heart. You have to be really focused, understand them, and think long term. And we brought to the table a totally new way of thinking about and using technology. And I would say almost 11 years later, we have such amazing case studies from our customers of what we've been able to do and achieve with them in a very, very fast-paced environment now that they had not been able to do in the past. In not-for-profits, that kind of evolved, Kristy, where I wrote a business case that we should create a not-for-profit group, and we've had that up and running, I think, about 4.5 years now. And working with our not-for-profits, I'll have to say, outside of just education, which let's just all agree, education is probably our most important vertical, because if we're not taking care of our students and making sure they are getting the skills that they need, that's going to be a problem for all of us in the future, especially the right technical and digital skills and the ability to think and integrate all that into what they do and whatever job or role that they're doing. It's just critical today and will be even more critical as we move forward, especially if you see in times like COVID where everything's gone digital. But with not-for-profits, we kind of said, not-for-profits don't really think about how they utilize technology as a way to really support their mission, make it move faster, get more insights about what's happening so they can speed that up. So what we really bring to the table for the not-for-profits is a way for them to utilize technology in an inexpensive and highly efficient way to really move the mission. And when you think about not-for-profits, they really are of all different flavors, forms, shapes, sizes globally. And so we see everything from not-for-profits who are working to stop human trafficking to doing farming, sustainable farming around the world, because we know that in many parts of the world, a lot of groups like Africa and India depend on farming in a very big way to keep their individuals and their economy flowing. To healthcare and research that helps understands our genomes better, to understand what type of cancer drugs work best through analytics and machine learning. To beautiful applications I've seen done through individuals who have a passion for taking education into the hospitals for those students and patients who have cancer. I mean, we just have so many amazing stories in our not-for-profit world. And our job is really to technically enable them, Kristy, and help them take their mission to the next level through cloud computing technology.
Teresa, I love the passion in your voice as you talk about what you do and the stories of who you're impacting and those businesses and the role that they play in our world, and hearing that type of just excitement and understanding of the purpose and the impact that the work you do every day, it matters, and you wrote a business case for working with nonprofits. I mean, as someone who has sat on the board of many nonprofits and worked with many, I understand innately the need for technology innovation and progress as we look to have greater impact to serve our stakeholders and our customers. And I just want to acknowledge just how inspired I am by that story, your enthusiasm, your passion, but also the connection to that end impact, because we need to think about the ways that the work we do in business is really serving a greater purpose. And it has meaning, and it's incredibly relevant now and always.
It is. And one other quick thing I'd even say about it, Kristy, is that with the not-for-profits, I was just on a group with Canada yesterday, Imagine Canada, and they're doing research studies to demonstrate the impact on the economy of not-for-profits and the work they do, how it shapes. And again, there's so many whose names that we could just kind of roll off our tongue. Red Cross, as an example, who works around the world at every imaginable, disaster that shows up, to the American Heart Association. Another group I love is the White House Historical Association, which gets the information to anyone now out about our house, which is, the White House is for all of us. It's not for any one person or group. It's for all of the Americans and the individuals who come to visit that, and getting education out about that. But the impact that not-for-profits have it's pretty significant. And I loved that this organization is going to do research to show that the economic impact they actually have in Canada. And then we're going to try to take that work and take it kind of around the world, duplicate that, because I do think not-for-profits can go very deep and thoughtful, even on a single topic, that a lot of organizations are not able to do, as just one example.
Teresa, let's talk about the pandemic. And you mentioned this earlier, especially in relation to education,
But I know you played a key role working with federal agencies to quickly migrate to cloud services, to really think about these fundamental structures and arrangements. As a mom of 3 kids, I saw how quickly we were moving much of what was, analog and papers into this digital realm. I spoke with so many people who had never worked from home before because of the technological limitations of where they were working. And then suddenly they're working remotely and trying to understand how to access files and access information and do their job efficiently. And so we've seen, just in a very short period of time, this huge transformation and acceleration in business. And you were really in the midst of that. So what was that experience like?
Well, it's still probably for a lot of us seems a little surreal. It almost is hard to believe that we're still in the middle of this. It's not over yet. But I will tell you, I think while people are tired of it for sure, they have adapted. And one of the surprises for me, to your point, Kristy, was how quickly our customers and the government organizations, as an example, really kind of moved quickly. And we've actually, in the public sector space, we've seen more innovation in the last few months than we've seen in 2 years. And let me put that into perspective for a minute, because in 2 years, my business has grown really nicely because customers are moving to the cloud. Cloud has become a new normal. So they've kind of started that journey already. And so for me to say that they're even moving faster is a really big deal because, like I said, governments have not always done that. But during COVID, they really had to vector because like no time I can ever remember, and for sure my lifetime, maybe even my mom's, I'm not sure, that citizens tuned in numerous times a day into media to hear government because they needed to know what was happening. Could they go out or not? Did they need to get a COVID test? What were this? I mean, they were learning everything new and they were depending on their government to provide that information. So one, information, understanding, and gathering. Two, then the government needed to be able to answer calls and talk to those citizens about things from, again, healthcare needs to benefits. And then they had to deliver those benefits and still are, like unemployment insurance to the citizens, or COVID testing sites, or if they were doing contact tracing in some countries. So we saw them moving really, really quickly to the cloud and setting up new services. And the other thing that kind of happened was they started to build quickly new applications because they saw a lot of the legacy things that they had were not working like they needed it to work. And we also, again, we learned those legacy systems were no match for the crisis, for sure. So that's why we saw them really moving. But it was really about customers really then were forced to address 3 main challenges. Again, designing those new solutions to tackle COVID-19, adapting new technologies to solve the challenge of social distancing, and migrating to the cloud to build solutions that were just simply impossible to build in those legacy IT environment. And it's really kind of the remote working solutions were key, as you know. Look at what we're doing today. You have a podcast anyway, but this would probably not be possible if we had to get face to face. So you needed remote work solutions, which a lot of companies needed to set up things like virtual private networks and remote desktop solutions, which extended not just their functionality, Kristy, but they had to extend their security environment. Because as you've seen, security during this period has become really hard because you have cyber attacks, ransomware attacks. You're having on hospitals, businesses. The bad guys have taken this opportunity to attack, so they had to make sure they were secure. And then the remote customer service. So digital call centers, as an example. We set up more digital call centers during this time. In like a 2.5 month period, we saw states, countries, individual groups, because most call centers, Kristy, individuals went into them. And so you had to go into those call centers, put on a headset and do the work. we helped them set up digital call centers so they could do and access all that, very quickly from wherever they were. So, just so many things. And probably the last area I just address on this is the research and development. We did see so many governments actually starting initiatives around research, because sometimes in crises like this, the individual and independent researchers kind of get left out. So at AWS, one of the programs I launched was something called Developmental Diagnostic Initiative, which we gave $20 million toward researchers to help increase the speed of finding solutions for COVID or understanding of COVID. And there's so many great stories around that. We're still working with a lot of those companies now today. And then the sharing of that. It's important to share across groups so that we can learn from each other and move a lot faster. So it's been interesting. I'll tell you, for my own team, we were so busy. I'm so proud of my teams. We were so busy because we saw this coming in like early end of February, I'd say. And we started working from China to Asia Pacific to Europe to the US and Latin America. And it just kept going. And we were like, what's happening? So the teams were really working very closely with all the governments to make sure that we were responding. So we were doing jumping jacks on calls and having calls twice a day. We were doing everything to keep ourselves motivated and moving. And I'm really proud of the work that my team was able to do, but we still got a lot more to do.
And Teresa, if you had a crystal ball, which I think we all wish we had these days, but what is the future? And I know that it's a tricky question because there are so many factors and so many unknowns. But seeing this type of transformational change happening in the past couple of months, where do you think we'll go from here? What are the trends in business, and how do you see this area evolving?
I do strongly believe that the changes that our customers made in response to COVID is going to fuel permanent changes in the way that we work at all levels, from government to commercial industries. I mean, you look at the tech, we're all changing too. We've not been back in our offices. They're open if people want to go, but it's not at all mandatory. It's optional. And so I believe a lot of these changes on remote work will be permanent for many, to some degree, at least. I think we're all learning there's things we can do remotely that we didn't think we could do. Like I used to fly around the world 60% of the time. Well, I found that I actually can be pretty effective. There's most certainly things you have to do face to face, but I believe that we've learned and we're going to adjust from a work environment. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw many of our customers, they were only focused on tackling the most urgent problems, which of course makes sense. Those kind of key areas, Kristy, I talked about. And they had to do it almost in an emergent way. Everything was kind of an emergency to make it happen. That's the reason we were so really busy, is because customers needed to get these services up and out, and they had to analyze that, and they had to figure out how they got their economies back open. So now, though, the difference is they've shifted to being more strategic and thinking longer term about what they're going to do in the future. So I see them much more vectoring toward, okay, now I have the basic items I need to do. How do I think about this for the longer term and rethink processes that are really maybe weren't that effective anyway? And that now they're going to reinvent these solutions to solve, I think, the challenges that they may have faced for years, but really hadn't done anything about. And I anticipate a lot of organizations that's going to move to a more ideal kind of hybrid technology model that really seeks to achieve the best of both worlds on these. And I think only time's going to tell, but I hope that we'll all learn from the experience and figure out how we can be more proactive in the future. And I do believe that we can learn that what's happening now is going to help us understand how we best respond to this in the future. But I will say too, just the thing I am most concerned about, by the way, I think you probably are as well, is the number of women that I'm seeing make decisions about to leave their job or not go back for now. And it's worrisome. I think the women have been the most affected in this, and we've got to stop the bleeding of women leaving their jobs. And we've got to make sure companies are working to support an environment that is comfortable for women to take care of their families and work. And I'll just share from my own experience. When we're on all the time, we're on our chime calls, our Zoom calls, and my team, I'll say to them, if their children walk in the room I'm like, put them on your lap. We just, you know what I'm saying? You have to be flexible in this environment, and you have to laugh about things. You can't take everything so seriously. And I think when it comes to family during this time, we've all got to be very thoughtful about flexibility and thoughtfulness. Because we're all not buttoned up today in a suit anymore. People are at home taking care of their families, taking care of their household, trying to work, trying to find a quiet place. And I think we're all learning to be a lot more patient with people. At least I hope we are.
So Teresa, I love that you brought up being a manager during this time, and particularly the importance that we support women and caregivers in the workplace, ensure that we continue to make progress on D&I and not move backwards. But I do think personally, as a leader and a manager during this time, it's a unique opportunity to reshape what that role looks like, in the way that we advocate for our teams, for our company, for cultural change. We, as you mentioned, it's our lives are so deeply on display right now and integrated between caregiving and children walking in the room and working and leading, and it's this jumping off point for us to think about how humanity moves forward and the workforce moves forward, just as we just talked about business moving forward. But how do we continue to support the full person in the workforce and to recognize unique experiences we all have, both leading, working, caregiving, and beyond.
I totally agree. I mean, if you think about individuals around the world, I have a global team. And you also have to really think, if you're a global leader, how is this affecting different employees in different work environments? And as an example, in certain parts of Asia, they have smaller homes. I've talked to some of my team in the UK and in Europe, and they live in small flats. And it's hard, right? It's very hard for them. They're in small locations with children. And that's the reason you just have to be more patient and allow these kind of noises or interruptions, and just take them as they come and celebrate that we're all, that we're here, we're safe, we're working, and let's just kind of laugh about some of these things. I have one of my employees, he's got 3 of the most gorgeous little girls, and they'll come in and I'm like, put them on your lap. I want to see them. And I think, like sharing, it's a time to share, maybe your family a little more, or just, I don't know, be lighthearted. Like I shared with you, we used to do jumping jacks at the end of all my calls for fun and do a few punches, because just to get some of the, energy focused outward instead of inward, if that makes sense, and release. Because, I like to get up and walk sometimes. And I tell my team, look, if you need to get up and go walk and get out of the house, or, if you can, if you're in that environment. But I do think it's important. You have to breathe a little bit more, because we're all on calls all day and there's never a break. So you have to be able to, again, take a temperature of everyone and adjust, and do some fun things. I found, if I may share, some of the things my team did, which they came up with the idea, was sending gift baskets to some of the hospitals around the world. And so they wrote notes, and they decided to, put the notes in there and what should go in the baskets. And they've each uniquely done different things like that as a group. Some work, working and helping in food shelters. And I think sometimes if you can work and give back to others too, it's helpful in understanding your own situation a bit more.
So Teresa, I want to do a quick lightning round. This is always a fun way to get to know you a little bit better. And I'm going to ask you some questions and just answer in a sentence or less. So, are you an introvert or extrovert?
Definitely extrovert.
What is your favorite day of the week?
It sounds so bad, but I really am excited now for Friday afternoon and also love Saturday. But Friday, I'm like, it's Friday. Yay. No more video calls for a few hours.
I hear that. What, are you an early bird or a night owl?
I can do both. I love to dance at night, but I have to say I'm more of an early bird now. I get up very early. I exercise every morning at 6:30. So I'm an early bird.
Who would be your dream dinner guest?
Well, I thought about this. I have to say it's probably Ruth Bader Ginsburg right now. I really loved her, and I had met her a few times. And was actually at a couple of dinners with her, but I was never at just the two of us. And I know Sandra Day O'Connor, who I love her. I think she's she calls herself a cowgirl. And I have to say, if I may, Coco Chanel, I love fashion. I really, I just, I look at her books, I look at the way she designs. So she's another one. I know I gave more than one, but those are the two women that I would love.
I love both of those, so that makes sense. Do you have a pet peeve?
Not taking ownership. We have a leadership principle at Amazon called high ownership, and I really want my people to take ownership. So when they don't, it really bugs me.
What is your Monday morning staple? So food or activity that you have to start your week off right?
It's so bad, but I have to have coffee, a strong Americano with regular cream. It's my thing every morning, not just Monday.
I'm a coffee junkie too. What's your favorite recent read?
I'm sad to say during COVID, I have been so busy, I'm almost too tired to read a book end to end. But the last one I read that I really loved, which again, this accent, but Hillbilly Elegy, which I thought was really good.
What's your top self-care practice?
It's my daily price skincare routine. I've just been doing it for years. And I just have a regimen morning and night. So it's kind of my thing I do every day, and it's a habit. And I think as I've gotten older, I'm like, okay, this has been good for me. I'm glad I've been doing this for a few years.
Could you elaborate? I'm curious. I would love to know what you're doing.
Well, it's kind of changed over the years, but definitely, sunscreen. And then I love vitamin C and E on my face. I have kind of Skin Better is the new thing that I've done the last few years that I really like. But I'm really vigilant about it. My eye cream now, it makes a big difference. And I think in kind of making you feel better and keeping your skin protected, because I like to be outside a lot. And I think it makes a big difference.
Oh, thank you for that. And finally, what is a final thought or question you want to leave with our listeners?
Well, one of the things I do like to tell, all the women for sure is what I shared earlier, which is write your own job description. That's one of the things for sure. And then also for everybody, it's a term I use a lot, but find a hole and fill it. And what I mean by that, if you see something that needs to be done, just go ahead and do it. Help get it done, and you're going to get recognized for that. And it's one of the ways I kind of built my career. If I see that's that high ownership piece, Kristy. If you see something that needs to get done, just go ahead and do it, and then demonstrate that you were able to do that, achieve it. You saw a problem and you took care of it. And it shows a great deal of leadership, and I think it will definitely get recognized. And for the women also, I say, once you get at the seat at the table, make sure you have a voice. It's critically important that when you show up there and you're there, you have a voice and that you're heard. And women have such amazing voices, and they have great things to say. So I want to make sure that they all get heard.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast. It was truly an honor to have you here, and it was great to hear your story and to get to know you better.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristy.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Ellevate NTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.